in which you can create additional revenue streams other than what you currently have. So we have that function, and actually this training that we are undertaking is part of the activities of that business development. And then of course we have partnerships. So personally, I specialize in mobilizing resources from. I'm sure Master mentioned yesterday we have the partners, government, like the US, which are now kind of the we have so there is those bilateral engagements that that's what this film is specialized on. Myself personally, I focus on businesses. That's what so far this representation gave of this generally this provides you with a standard process of how you develop and design. So this is the objective or the goal of our training today. So basically, by the end of the training, we hope to equip you with the skills, knowledge, and tools to develop a compelling, high quality, and bankable project. Funding. I think the key word there is about attracting what? I don't know how many of us here, and maybe by show of hands, have been involved in designing and developing proposals for funding.
Okay. They have not attracted funds.
Now, the question I wanted to ask is, out of the proposals that you have developed, how many of those that have actually been successful? And for us, successful means that it has actually attracted funding. Good. So we would like to learn from you also to share with colleagues here on what were the tips and skills that you used. It's very important. I know proposal writing is not an easy task. It's something, it's a skill that you have to hone over time. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, at least you would have gained or learned something that will help you in improving your proposal writing skills. So let's start with the basics. What are the steps? You know, sometimes we assume very simple things, but it's very important to understand that there is a procedure of how you go about developing a proposal, designing and developing a proposal. The steps that we have here, probably you might not find them in the books, because I must acknowledge that I'm in a meeting surrounded by intellectuals. So sometimes, probably what we are presenting is based on what we've been practicing in the development world. So the steps we have here is based on what we normally do as a team at NetFund. And this normally works for us, but of course with some little customization here and there, we will find the process a bit straightforward. So these are the steps of writing a bankable proposal. The first thing you do is identification of the opportunity through the donor engagements and the RFPs. So you don't just wake up and start developing a proposal without knowing for whom are you developing or for what opportunity are you responding. So that must be the first thing that you have to establish. The second thing is about making a decision of whether or not you want to pursue that opportunity. Again, there are so many opportunities. I know in your space, there are so many calls for opportunities from maybe universities in Germany requesting for research proposals that can be supported for funding. I know the National Research Fund, isn't it? Also issues calls for proposals. But you must, the fact that it's an opportunity does not mean that you have to respond to every opportunity. You have to evaluate that opportunity to establish whether that's something that's fit for you as an organization. Are you even eligible to apply? So there is that level of decision making that you need to make, because as we will realize later, proposal writing is a very expensive process and you invest resources. So for you to make that decision, you must really be sure of what you want to do. Once you have made that decision of developing the proposal, the next step is now setting up with an action about the proposal. So you must identify the institution that you think will bring the right messages. Because proposals sometimes are, are designed to address different issues or challenges. So you must make sure that in your team you have the right mix. So for us, and maybe let me just also mention this, that sometimes this must not be just within. I understand sometimes you can even collaborate with another university, isn't it? Yes. So you might want to collaborate with another university that's more specialized on certain areas, so that you can really draw in that expertise into your proposal writing team. For NetFund, for example, given that we write proposals in the environment and climate change sector, we normally have people from the different sectors. So sometimes we bring someone from test. I hope you understand these institutions. We bring someone from the sector, because we realize you can have money. So that's very important. Once we have assembled the team, then you come up with now some of these opportunities within a certain time, and you must have a plan of action how you're going to do that. So that's very important. Then once you have done that, the next step is about reviewing the guidelines and starting on the donor. Most of instructions or guidelines to guide applicants on submission. So you have to review that and be able to put together the Senate, the highest council of the university, sometimes we are required to get a letter from the CS or from the National Treasury. So you have to check these guidelines to ensure that you have all the necessary, to check all the necessary guidelines. Then step 5 is about now gathering the information. So once you have, of course, reviewed the guidelines and you determine that that's something you can pursue, then you have to gather the relevant documentation to help you now put together the proposal. The step 6 is about now the actual writing of the proposal. So for us, what we normally do is that we convene items. So we can come like here for 3 days or 5 days with the team that we have already established. We are able to design the project and be able to put the item. Again, you must also have in this proposal writing process someone to review your proposal. So sometimes you can write something very good, but probably you have overlooked something. So it's very important that you have, just like the way I know when we do the research proposals, there must be someone who reviews the proposal and gives the feedback. So in the same way, you should have that in your structures. Then the other key thing that you have to do is about validation of the proposal with key stakeholders. So once you have designed the entire proposal, stakeholder engagement in the validation is very key. So you have to present this proposal to relevant stakeholders that are likely to step is about sometimes we don't. So polite reminders is not a bad thing to do, to just track progress of your proposals. So I think I've talked about that. So our first module, we are going to talk about the introduction on writing the bankable proposals.
Sorry.
Yes, and by the way, you can you can interject me at any time, but there is still at the end of my presentation you can have still a quick plenary session to reflect on some of the tasks. Yes, sir. And by the way, because I have not known you, now this presents a very good opportunity. So as you raise your question or observation, kindly introduce yourself, sir.
Okay. I'm Brigadier Ndari from National Defense University, simply called Defense University. Please go back to the last slide, and I wanted you to explain a little bit of step 10, where you're talking about follow-up and track progress. What are the issues here?
So, once you have submitted a proposal, which is step 9, it's important that you do follow with the donor. You check on the progress of the proposal. Sometimes these donors receive so much applications, and it takes really a lot of time for them to get back to you. We have done proposals whereby we submit a proposal and it takes even 3 months for them to get back to you, even acknowledge it. So I think a good practice for us is email to ask about the status of the project, is any feedback. That really helps or shows your proactiveness.
Assuming there was a call for a proposal, and you have done that, and they accept, the computer generated confirmation we have received, and they have told you will be something like we are going to take maybe about 6 months in processing your proposal. Is there need?
No. If the instruction is very clear, and in most cases, those instructions come in the guideline. They will tell you we will take at least 1 month to get back to you. We expect to do the evaluation by this date. We expect to notify the in case there is such explicit information about the teacher.
In addition, most of the serious programs usually have what person called program officer. The program officer, like a hands-on person, communicating with all the potential applicants. All throughout the process, during the pre-application and even the post-review and everything. And they can actually update you on everything that is going on without necessarily compromising the whole before you send an application, you can share with them the concept and ask them whether that will be a response to that type of form. And they'll give you information whether it is something that you can submit. So that always is one person that we hold.
Yes.
Throughout the process.
Yes.
Program officer. For every call they state that the program officer will be so and so, this are the contract, this are the emails, and they respond in real time. They're the best people ever. You might really want to.
Thank you for that input and your name, sir. So,
Collins Ouma.
Collins Ouma from Madeleine. Okay, thank you so much, sir. So, as he stated, it is right that they have dedicated officers who actually respond to these client queries. And with that, next, So, so in our introduction session, we want to maybe some of these things probably understand because of the sector that you work in. But it will be good to have that same understanding, also bringing in the development side of things. So we have to agree on what we define as a bankable proposal. Okay? What are the key elements of a proposal that makes it bankable or attractive to financiers? Then we are going to understand more about the project life cycle. What are the typical stages a project has to go through? And you as a program or a project proposal developer needs to be aware. Then another key thing is about the key government development priorities. All our proposals that we do must respond to some development needs identified by government or even national government or even the county government. And then what are the challenges and opportunities when it comes to proposal development? Now, for the purpose of our presentation, we are using a case study. I don't know whether you use this, especially when you are engaging with the students. Yeah, so sometimes it helps to understand some concepts better. We are using this case study here throughout this session on writing and designing proposals. So the case study I'm using is a project title. It's a project named Sustainable Water Access and Sanitation in North County. So that is the title of this particular project. And in terms of the background, we are saying that Kilifi North County faces acute water scarcity, especially during dry seasons, leading to poor sanitation practices and increased incidences of waterborne diseases. Existing water resources are often unreliable or contaminated. This project aims to improve access to safe and reliable water to promote better sanitation and hygiene practices. So with that simple description, do you understand what the problem and what the project intends to do? It's about water access and the issue of poor sanitation practices within Kilifi County. So that's what we are going to use for purposes of learning the different concepts when it comes to proposal writing and design. So let's start with the basics. So what is a bankable proposal? As I said, we are in the business of writing a bankable proposal because a bankable proposal is that which can attract funding. So we are saying a bankable proposal is that which a donor is confident to actually provide funding. The reason why the donor will be interested in funding that proposal is because it solves a real problem which has been demonstrated. It is something feasible, meaning that actually you can actually solve that problem in terms of the solution that you are proposing. The organization can deliver. This is also a very important thing. You can propose a project, but you don't seem to have the capacity to implement that project. So again, if you don't have that, then that cannot qualify as a bankable proposal. And then lastly, it's something that is going to give impact. Donors are really interested in the change your project will create by the end of the implementation. So if your proposal can speak to these 5 broad areas, then the proposal is what?
Excuse me.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you the example that before this example given us of an example, yeah, of Kilifi something.
Yes. So the key as I said, one of the issues there is that there must be a clear problem and solution defined. So you have clearly articulated the problem and you have provided a solution for that problem. The second thing is about feasibility. Most proposals require that we have to do some feasibility studies, isn't it? To establish their viability. So, in undertaking feasibility studies, you can look at it from the technical perspective, the financial perspective, economic, social, and environmental perspective. Here, it's about demonstrating whether the project is realistic and is actually achievable. The issue of strong management and governance about the capacity. As a proponent, or as the person who's developing that project, demonstrate that you have the capacity to implement that project. Ability, as I say, is like investment. Okay? So, that is the impact and the benefits. So, are you able to demonstrate that your project is going to create impact? Not just by writing stories, but it's quantifiable. You can demonstrate with strong data and statistics. Then, the management, how are you going to manage risks that will come out of the project? Alignment with further priorities. So, again, you want to develop a proposal that's not contributing directly to the priorities of the donor. And then, of course, any proposal must have a very clear monitoring and evaluation plan. So, what is the project life cycle? So, as I said, if you are into business of designing and developing bankable proposals, you must be familiar with this process. Because this is the stages of what you must go through the entire life cycle. So, the first stage is about identification phase is where you are identifying the need. The point at which you say we want to do a research on, I don't know, depending on the different issues that the university probably would want to focus on, there must be that phase of need identification. The second stage is about concept. So, right now you and develop this idea of want to do to address that need or in response to that need. And at that stage, we want to come with a concept, 3 pages of what you want to do. The next phase is about the formulation phase. So this is where now you put the detailed design and the all of that idea that you have already agreed. The next stage is about appraisal stage. So once you have done the proposal, obviously you must now engage partners who can fund it. So they will always assess your proposal in terms of whether it's meeting their requirements. The next is about financing. So you are once the proposal has gone through the appraisal, you get the funding. The next stage, which is normally like the bigger part of the entire life cycle, is about the implementation. This is where you deliver that, isn't it? So you sort of actualize the vision you had in the proposal. So you are able to implement the activities to achieve this. Then you have the implementation process, and then all projects. I don't know in terms of project. I will be able to hand over all this project and ensure that there is sustainability. Okay. So that's basically the process. And get into the details of all that. But for now, before you develop any proposal, again, as part of the basics, you must have an understanding of the Kenyan context. Because all proposals that we design are in a response to a developmental what? Need. So it's very important that if you are developing any project, whether you are in health, whether you are in education, whether you are in development, energy, you must be familiar with the developmental challenges within the Kenyan landscape. And to help you with that, the number of documents we have implementation and implemented through the successful medium term plans. So you must look at the current medium term plan. We have to look at that medium term plan and see what are the priorities that the government has identified. So most check, see whether the government is responding to that. Then the other issue that we also need to be aware of is the issue of counties. Since the new constitution, counties are also new governments. So most of the people we are not aligning with what the county development priorities are. And we have the CIP, County Integrated Development Plans, which we also need to cross-check. Now, other than that, there is the issue of the day. See you put Guru said we have the day before. Size to connect bottom data. Yeah, bottom. So again, it's very important that you are familiarize yourself with what are the priorities in those documents. Now, familiarize yourself with the developmental issues. Then, ask yourself the funding landscape. So, who is funding what? That is also another thing to do as a so in this case, most of the projects are through government allocations, especially I know even we get an allocation, but it's not never enough. So that's one of the areas to look at. The category of funding source is multilateral. So we have these MDBs that provide funding. So it would be very nice to look at their country strategy. There is what they call the country strategy papers, and see what they are prioritized. Now we also have bilateral donors, as I mentioned. Tuna watu kama USA, GIZ, NORAD, all these donors have presence in Kenya. We have embassies wings. So those are also guys that we need to check, even within their websites or their country strategies, on what their priorities are. The other category of donors is global funds. I talked about this. This is an area that I really specialize on. So there are various global funds established. We have the Green Fund, we have the Global Development Facility. There are quite a number, again, in different sectors. For example, in the health, there is the Global Fund that supports issues around malaria and stuff. So it's very important to know for your sector, which are these global financing mechanisms that have been established, which you can actually tap into. The other sources, of course, is philanthropic organizations. We have these, private companies that have established foundations. We know the Rockefeller Foundation, the Care Foundation, Bezos Fund, Bill and Melinda Gates. All these guys also have offices here in Kenya. So we need also to check with them on who's funding what. and whether maybe the idea you are proposing maybe fits into some of this. Other things that you can also look at is your private sector investments. So right now, actually, the president is really pushing for this demand of the private sector. He's saying that hii mambo ya kuchukua loan is not sustainable. Ni kweli. We don't have the physical space as a country. And what they are saying is that as a private sector, you come in, you partner with the government, you do a project, you book your returns, and hand over the project to what? The government. I think that's the model they are using. Right now, the expressway, that's how it has been done. Here, the Maui Rolling Summit Road, that's the proposal they have. So, even now for the university, here, for example, is it called Kenyatta University, the Manchandera Business Incubation Center? I think it was a partnership with the Manchandera Foundation. So there are also opportunities you can look at. Because I know there are some universities that are really pursuing a lot of income generating activities. So when it comes to income generating activities, they provide a good opportunity for private investors. So some of you probably want to start a conferencing facility, okay? Which you can bring people, you charge some money. There are universities, and I think like Maseno, which are doing very well when it comes to daily, kuna wengine wanafanya agriculture, we are trying to add value into the produce that we are already producing. So I understand that there is a lot of opportunities even within the universities for this kind of investment. It's just your ability to be able to identify them and identify the right partner that you can work with. Now, once you have understood the funding landscape, as I said, this is just like an introduction. You are really trying to understand the area before you start writing a proposal. The next thing that you need to be familiar about is the regulatory frameworks in Kenya. Whenever we write a proposal, there are certain legal issues that come into play. And you need to be familiar with those legislations and how they are likely to impact your project or proposal. You've heard about projects that have been stopped by the court, because they were not compliant. So, one of the legislation here, the Public Finance Management Act. Now, in so long as we are a government agency, all resource mobilization activities must be done in accordance with the Act. So, we must get approval from the Treasury. Even when it comes to signing of the agreement, Treasury comes in to do that role. So you have to be familiar with that. Then there is another regulation called regulations, public investment management regulations. All proposals that are done by government have to be approved by that team department. So they have to check whether your proposal is feasible. Is it aligned with the government priorities? And is it going to create the benefits? Is there a return on investment? Because I think the Treasury is really challenged about the return on investment of public resources. So they have an obligation to ensure that all public resources are used efficiently and prudently. The other one is procurement. This normally comes in, especially when now during project implementation. Again, you have to comply with that. If you do things outside that act, another one is the Environment Management and the Coordination Act, MCA. Even building a small hostel, you will require an EIS, environmental impact assessment. So you also have to look at, is my project likely to create some impact to the environment, negative, and therefore trigger those kind of assessments. Then other than these ones, which are compulsory, sectoral policies. So now, depending on which sector you're working in, if you're doing an energy project, you also need to be aware about the energy regulations. If you are in the health, if you are in agriculture, so you also you have to familiarize yourself with the relevant legislations in that area. So at least, as I said, that's really like setting the stage and trying to have that general understanding of the issues before you really get into the proposal, detailed proposal design and development. So what are the challenges? So again, this is based on our experience. These are some of the challenges we see in writing a proposal. One of the key challenges is that, for you to convince a donor that there is a problem here of water insecurity, you must demonstrate beyond doubt using numbers. So sometimes when we are writing a proposal, you realize that there is some lack of data in certain subject that will help you make a very strong argument. But I think now, as research institutions, you are at an advantage because really, research institution is about generation of new knowledge. And you can be able to demonstrate that it more easily than the other institutions. The other issue is about weak feasibility studies. Maybe you are doing a certain project that involves some engineering design, you've seen So if we ignore some of those things, it happen even financial modeling. Again, we are not able to demonstrate investment, that's also be a challenge. Past years, but it's enough. So someone that. The other big challenge is about insufficient stakeholder engagement. This is very serious. Some stakeholders, so for every project that you are designing, you must identify the primary stakeholders and be able to involve them in the entire process. Otherwise, you risk your project being rejected and that buying or ownership from the community. Gaps in writing, sometimes you can have a very good idea, but you don't have the writing skills. So again, that can be a challenge. Then coordination issues. It's very embarrassing to hear that the university is doing a project, a research project, wamesubmit to, let's say, NRF. Na maseno pia wame what does that mean? There is no coordination, and it leads to issues of implementation. So that it's very important to check the peers, colleagues, on what they are doing. Probably what you are trying to do, try recommendation. So in light of those challenges, of course, there are no opportunities that present themselves when it comes to this. So opportunities present themselves within our government development agenda. Of evolution now is a very big. There are certain donors that are very keen on working with county. But I could see national government. Then there are a lot of donors now interested in certain subjects. So right now there's a lot of talk about water. There's a lot of talk about climate. There's a lot of talk about food systems. So that's also another opportunity. Then of course, the private sector engagement. So our original example that we say how does it measure on the definition of whether it's bankable or not. So when you look at the water, so how does it measure on bankability? So first of all, they say that for a project bankable, you must activate So the problem they did activate that as acute water scarcity, poor sanitation, and water disease. They are proposed that as sustainable water access and sanitation improvement. And then why is it bankable? Because it's addressing a fundamental human need. You can see how it's aligning with our government and the national county priorities. It's a lot of potential for creating environmental and economic impact. Environmental and economic impact. And that attract people and potentially the private sector when it comes to utility management. So what are now the key takeaways from that first module? So from the first module, you can see that the one backup your project is fundable, it has to be realistic, and it has to be backed. That when you are developing any proposal, how the national and the county priorities, the need for you to understand the funding landscape before you start writing a proposal is very, very important. Okay? And then I think we have also seen some of the common challenges you can encounter in writing this vulnerable portfolio. So that's the first module. We are now going into module 2. As I said, module 1 was sort of is an introduction, just trying to have some basic context or background.
You need to ask me questions.
Yes. Yes, so I think we agreed that you can always stop me anywhere if there is something that you want to understand. So, having had that general background.
Let
Yes,
me
yes.
ask a question.
Yes.
Sometimes, let's say, for example, the issues of feasibility studies done that small universities can use to still get the data that they need to bank to show that there is an actual need or opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Your name, please?
Dr. Angeline from Goa.
Dr. Angeline.
Yes.
From Thank you for your question. And yes, you are right that most donors will demand that you do that. And I'm very sure when we started, or when this training started, it must have been mentioned that proposal, the resource mobilization, for you to do it, you must have some resources. It doesn't come for free. Unasema pesa inamulika, pesa inamulika. Good. So at least there must be some level of investment. That is really the bottom. Okay? Even for us at NetFund, we have a budget for doing all those things because you risk a situation whereby your proposal is rejected or declined because it's not strong or it's not meeting those requirements. However, for us, again, not all the times we get all the funding. When it comes to stakeholder engagement, again, it's about being innovative and creative on how you get these funds. So for us, sometimes we do virtual technology, virtual consultation meetings. You don't have to travel and get a venue and accommodate people. So you can organize those virtual meetings, which are of course, and be able to get feedback and input from stakeholders. Now, for issues of feasibility studies, again, you can also do a lot of maybe literature, online literature. There is a lot of online literature in some of the areas that you can use to combine and try to create a case for your project. For us, what we normally do is that sometimes when we don't have resources, that's what we do. But then we also request for some small funding. It's called project preparatory grant, which will now enable us to do a detailed feasibility assessments and also stakeholder engagement. So sometimes donors actually provide for that kind of a funding where you can access a percentage of resources for your program to enable you to do those kind of preparatory. Okay. I hope I've
Yes.
So now let's look at module 2, which is focusing on project identification. So how do we identify now the project? How do we conceptualize it? And then how do we do the feasibility studies? So these are the learning objectives. So as I said, the first thing is about identifying the project or the need. So I will be able to show you how to do that. The issue of stakeholder, what we are saying, how do we map and engage stakeholders? Very important. How can we come up with our SMART objectives for the project, which will help us come up with a concept note? And then the issue of feasibility studies. As I said, you really need to look at this in more detail and see why it's extremely important to do it. And then how do you draft a concept note? That's very compelling because the concept note will be the first initial engagement tool you will use to see the engage with a donor to see whether they are interested or not. So from an idea to a defined need. So the needs assessment. So as I said, you first of all have to identify the need for your project. So how do you do that? And what is the purpose? It's very important that we systematically understand how to identify the need and understand the gaps between the current situation and what we desire to change. The reason why this is very important is because, as I said, probably you are not the first person who's trying to solve that problem. There are probably other guys who have come in and are trying to address the issue, but probably there are gaps. That's where you have to do the needs assessment. So what are some of the key questions you have to answer here? What is the problem? So you must be able to state clearly the problem that you are trying to address. Who is affected by the problem? Is the problem affecting students? Is it affecting the local community? Is it affecting the businesses around the community? Okay. Where is the problem? So it's about dividing the geographical scope. Is it within a certain town, municipality, community, or a bigger county? Why is the problem there? So it's trying to understand what are the underlying causes. We have to understand the root cause of the problem because we don't want to go ahead and start treating symptoms. And the problem is still there. So it's very important that we understand the root causes. And then what existing solutions are there and why are they sufficient? So if that problem is already there, what is currently being done and why? What gaps are still there that can be addressed? So for you to do a needs assessment, these are some of the methods. I think you are intellectuals in these areas. You understand even better ways of doing this activity or task. So it's basically doing some data analysis where you can either do some sensors, you look at the health records, you do some surveys, you can maybe dispatch some group of researchers who can go and collect data. You can also do community consultations so that you get their views and input, focus group discussions, key informant interviews, and of course, direct observations. So let us look at our Kilifi water and sanitation program and see how they identify the needs. So in terms of the problem, that's how they stated the problem. So the problem there is chronic water scarcity, which is of course caused by the seasonal droughts, the issue of contaminated water sources, which is causing the issues of hygiene. Then there is the high incidences of waterborne diseases and the issue of long distances the community take to the waterports. What are the causes of the problem? These are the points that they have mentioned. So issues of climate change. So when there is reduced rainfall, the water becomes scarce. Okay. inadequate infrastructure. So maybe they don't have enough water points or boreholes. There is the issue of poor sanitation awareness and lack of household water treatment projects. So what were the data sources for them to come up with this problem? So one of the documents they reviewed is the Kilifi County Integrated Development Plan. So if, for example, you are going to do a project in Kwale County, it will be very nice to look at the CIDP there because they have already done a lot of assessments and most of the CIDPs are informed by community consultations. Health statistics, that's what they also use. WASH sector reports, because this is in the health sector, community surveys, and of course, meteorological data. So for them, the community that was affected is the residents within Kilifi North, and you see they are put numbers there. And this is mainly the women and children to bear the burden of water protection. So at least we have seen how to identify the need. Hapo tuko sawa? You've seen how you can identify the need. Now, once you have identified the need, the next step is about stakeholder mapping. You have to identify who are your critical stakeholders, because those guys will also help you shape your project and refine it. So the question here when you are doing stakeholder analysis and engagement is you have to ask yourself, who are these stakeholders that are affected by the project? As I said, are they individuals, are they groups, organizations? Why engage? So why must we engage stakeholders? It's because most of these stakeholders probably have an interest in our project, or there is that we need to address. So that's why it's very important that stakeholders are engaged. And for your project to be owned, or for you to get that buy-in, this is why it's very important that we engage the stakeholders. And those are the key questions that you can ask yourself when it comes to stakeholder analysis and engagement. So there is a tool which I am very sure you are already familiar with, that you use when you are doing stakeholder analysis. So we normally analyze stakeholders based on the power they have and the interest they have. So you can see. And those 4 quadrants provides an opportunity on how you engage them. So for stakeholders that have very high power and have very high interest, you come on high power, high interest, you manage closely or work together. So if there is a stakeholder who has very high power and has a very high interest in your project, then you must find a way of working together, because they are very important to the success of the project. Stakeholders have very high power, but they don't have interest. The interest is very low. So for those ones, for us, for example, when we are developing a project, is developing our PS, high what? High power. So we have to inform them of what we are doing. So for your case, I don't know whether you need to inform your vice chancellor. Who do you need to inform about the work that you are doing? Now there are those stakeholders who have high interest, but they have very low what? Power. And in most cases, these are like the project beneficiaries. Maybe your project is going to serve some, rather benefit some community members. So for them, what do? You have to keep them informed, but also continuously do what? Consult them. So this provides a very simple tool. I know probably there are other tools that we can use. We map, analyze, as well as the digital products.
Our vice chancellor have high power,
Yes.
very low interest.
I don't know. It depends. It depends.
We have to keep them satisfied
Eh,
and informed.
where do you think, for example, what if you are doing a project for Kilifi Town, where would they be? It will be high power and high interest. Because hao wanaangalia votes. But they also have power. They are not going to project yake. Most projects have actually failed because of this. You are not getting stakeholders in the right way. You have not mapped them correctly. So there are some guys who just
Actually, for you to know where they fall in, I know the department gave them the tools to see where the interest is, where
Yes.
the power is.
Yes.
Then you come back and say, okay, if I'm dealing with this stakeholder, this is where they actually fall. For based on that, what is doing in the questionnaire, like they are powerful, but I have no
Yes.
they have high power. You know where it is. You never match it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use it. So once you have agreed on the idea, the idea is the first step. You know the problem you're trying to solve. You know who's affected. You now classify those stakeholders using this project, and that would give you. Okay, let's see for Kilifi. What are the stakeholders here? You remember about the stakeholder project. What are the project? So for them, the beneficiaries, they are mapped out. These are basically households, schools, and health facilities. Those are actually the health groups. Government stakeholders. What are the kuna mama na ministers the county level. Kuna Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health because of issues of sanitation there. Ministry of Education. Maybe you need to do working groups now. Now what harvest storage authority is one to promote some water harvesting technologies. Water Resources Authority, local authorities. Chiefs. Unajua hao ukisahau chiefs. Chiefs. Anaenda na say to community mkataa hiyo. So that's the level you need to get into when you are in a step. Groups. From identify what are women groups, youth groups, private sector. Again, in order to look at your project, is there a possibility of bringing in private sector players? So for this one, local contractors who can do the work, they are very important. Water vendors, such who sell water, and suppliers of water. CSOs, civil society organizations, maybe already 10 years there doing some water projects. And then finance. So you can see the how diverse the tax stakeholder mapping can be. Including the next project that we are doing, map them that.
Now we keep USAID out because they even close the headquarters in Washington.
You say now it's like a very terrible story. Yeah, I think as far as we are like those changing trends and in the donors. So there are some donors, not donors, there are some pro-free institutions who are heavily reliant on USAID funding. And what happened? See, we have close shop. Now, the subject of the administration becomes very on that. On why you do not rely on just one money for your programs, because the risk is too high when they grow. Now, once you have identified your stakeholders, the next step is about now defining the problem. Because here, this is now where you bring even your stakeholders to help you do what? The first stage of stakeholder what? Consultation. It's not just about someone seated in the problem in the very village. So it's very important to define the problem. So if the problem is the tool is probably, I think most of you are aware of this problem. So you have to identify what is the core problem, which is the stem in this case. What are the causes, what are the roots, and the effects. So when we are told, can you state the problem? The problem is this, it's caused by X, and it's leading to. So you must get that very well. So again, let's take for KD. So the problem of the state, what they are trying to address, yes, the core problem is the issue of inadequate access to safe and sustainable water and sanitation services. What is causing this? What is causing the problem? The issue is about limited functional water infrastructure. Okay? The other cause is insufficient rainfall or water. The other cause is lack of sanitation leading to water management strategies. What is the effect of this problem? The issue of increased water diseases, full of segregation, because now kids have to spend a lot of time in water resources. Environmental degradation, also open education, and this is very important because your project is now going to be on the process. You are able to focus your intervention so that in addressing what the because we don't want to address the same problem, but rather than the root cause of the problem. Now, the next thing that we will do is now defining SMART objectives. Okay? And in defining SMART objectives, again, probably this is something that's very familiar with you. All objectives are characterized by these 5 parameters. The objective has to be specific and clear. It has to be measurable, so you are able to measure over a period. It must be achievable. Achievable speaks to the something that's doable. It has to be relevant to the current development priorities and maybe aligned with development. So you must have a date by when you can. For demonstration process, using our water project. So we have to and critical setting. Those are like and set in our national development blueprints. So you can always pick those from the national documents. So it would be to significantly improve the health and well-being of communities in the county through enhanced access to safe water and sanitation. So depending on the sector, so since this is in the health and water, some of these goals are with that in terms of what is the long-term objective of that. So they have to sort of the root causes. So one of the objectives they are seeing is want to look at the proportion of access, states that are getting water from 5%. So it's about access to water. Reducing the incidence of water diseases in targeted health facilities by 40%. And then lastly, is about ensuring that 80% of the targeted households adopt improved practices. So are these objectives measured? Are they achievable? They have that high impact. So all objectives have to fit in that criteria.
You're saying all.
Yes, all the objectives must fit this requirement.
Of projects you have.
Yes.
We are looking for funding, you must give frequency and timelines.
Yes, you need to demonstrate that. It's very important. Maybe you can give an example that you like. It might be very difficult because the reason why it's very important because it will speak to the feasibility of your project. You don't want to have objectives that are very vague, okay, that are not very specific, that don't have a timeline by when, because you need to show results at some point. You will.
And then yesterday we were told that every project should have a research component.
Yes.
So my question would be, in your own project, did you include a research component to it, or?
So I but for us, we need to come now in the development space. It becomes a little bit difficult to mobilize funding for research, fewer research focus. Because number one, finance money is not research. So, donors wakiangalia what we are proposing and our mandate inakuanga. So we became a bit creative. In our proposal, we are going to plant this or doing restoration work. So we can put one of the objective or activities on doing some research. We can do some trends on which areas are degraded, okay, which type trees to plant. So we try to embed those activities without the research institutions in the sector. I think there is nothing wrong from you doing a proposal that's mainly focused on research work. But I know again in my area, you have to talk about research, how to apply it. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
But even as you do the project work, you could be doing some research and question. When you need it, there's some data you'll be collecting about just the forest. You want to plant trees. The stakeholders around the areas you want to plant trees. You go in and talk to them even about the type of trees they want to be planted around that area, their perception, how they build paths. You don't want to collect that type of data. You get to that level because either you are doing questionnaire or you are engaging them in this qualitative activity, FED, informal interview. So you basically have that information. Which by design is research. As much as your ultimate goal is to project, still have some information that can do this research. But what I wanted to add onto this objective, just go to the next slide. And I think that's also really important. See the objective, they're relatively detailed. But the success of one is not dependent on the other. For example, if you fail in number one, where you say increase the proportion of households with sustainable access to safe and affordable drinking water from 35 to 70 targeted wards of drinking. If that fails, it doesn't affect your objective.
Yeah.
Yeah, they must be exclusively independent of each other. The success or failure should be exclusively independent of each other. So that if objective one fails, doesn't affect the objective two, doesn't affect the objective three. And when I talk about the feasibility,
Yeah.
I think donors are very keen on that, because if you tie the objectives together, that the success of objective number one will lead to success of objective number two, success of objective number three. So what that means is that if you are given money and objective one fails, because sometimes they fail, then it means the objective two and three cannot be achieved. Then the whole project has collapsed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to remind us that, once the objectives can be interrelated, because we are talking about the wash, everything, water, sanitation, but they must not be independent, dependent on each other for the success.
Yes, I agree with you. So, of course, at the end of the day, as I said, there is that bigger goal we want to achieve. Okay? That is how you can look at those objectives in terms of how they are related to each other. Because we are saying, if, for example, we don't provide sanitation facilities, and sanitation, water, availability of water and sanitation are closely related. So if you don't achieve also, at the end of the day, the bigger goal or impact that you are trying to get may not be possible. However, as I said, it's also right that these objectives, you cannot really achieve each of these independently. Because the first one is about availing water. So either unaenda unachimba boreholes and communities would have access to water leakage. The next one, water. This water conditioned by the health. Say maybe the health facilities, you might want to do maybe some latrines that you want to do so that you can reduce those instances. So again, they are not related. But at the end of the day, when all of them are achieved, the goal is to improve what? The health and the well-being of the community. Yes. But the reason why they have to be smart this way is so that at the end of the project, you are able to ask yourself, have you really achieved what you have set out to do? So if you state the objective in such a way that they are not very specific, not very measurable, and they are not achievable, because when you look at that objective, you can actually answer all those parameters as with regards whether they are smart or not.
Another question, Andrew. Now, when you want to do a study, you must disclose the geographical scope. This one is very specific, it's Kilifi enough. But now where you have projects that you want to do in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Rwanda, what do you state in terms of your geographical scope? Do you need to include all of them there, the geographical scope?
Yes, I think it is. It's possible. You can say in East Africa, if you are doing, of course, we have the East Africa community, you see, and if the project is touching on all those countries, you can say your project in East Africa community. If it's just two countries, like Tanzania and Kenya, you can just mention in Kenya and Tanzania. And even in Kenya, probably you're not doing in all the countries. So when you go now into the project document where you'll be describing about the geographical scope, you can now be very clear on which specific countries your project will come.
Actually, if you share a problem in those three countries, it might not be the whole country.
Yes.
It could be pockets of areas within the countries, the different countries. So when you're defining your problem, you define your problem within the areas that you want to go in and do them. As much as you recover in the three countries, but your problem is within specific pockets. So you still have to define the problem based on the statistics that you have on the documents that You was required to CIDP because this is within the county government of Kenya. But maybe in Uganda it is district.
Yes.
You have to define where the problem is.
Yeah,
It is changing the particular document you are referring to there. You go to Tanzania, it's a different setup, you define the problem there. Because you can't do a study of the whole country.
It's true.
And there could be a place where there's more enhanced problem than others. So you really want to narrow down your scope to where the problem is highest. So that's it is seen that you're addressing a particular scope.
So you have to be very specific in that aspect in defining the scope. And that's why we say, when we're saying the problem, where is this problem? That actually answers the question of the geographical scope. Is it in the entire, because sometimes even in the county, you might not be doing everything in the whole county. Maybe you are very specific on a certain ward or a sub-county. So that level of specificity really helps to focus your project, because sometimes you cannot be all over, and you end up maybe spreading the resources thin and not being able to create what the impact. Yeah. So I think we are done. So we are basically discussing about the scope there. Yeah. That's what we were just discussing. It's really important you define the boundaries of the project. Why this is very important? It prevents the scope creep. To manage also expectations. Sometimes you can say you're working in a certain county. Alafu MMC mwingine anasema mimi hujakuja hapa kwangu. Yeah? So if you are not able to define very clearly where you are going to work, then you will have a problem managing the expectations of the community. So that's very important. And also the issue of resources, as I say, you don't want to spread yourself so thin. So it's good to be more focused. And then, so as I said, the key elements here is looking at the geographical area, the target population. So you need to define who are your target people that you want to benefit from the project. If you define that very clearly, you won't have problems, and then the duration of it. So for this population again, this is how they have defined the scope. Geographic focus. So there are three counties, sorry, 3 words. Target population, they have already defined the people they are going to target. So these are the 150 residents, but who are mainly households, schools, and community health centers. These are the activities they are going to do. Okay? And then the project will be for 4 years. The project is viable and impact. Is the project really doable? Is it something that you can do from these different parameters? So, technical feasibility. When we do a technical feasibility assessment, the question is, can it be built? If you are talking about a technology, if you are going to build a road or a bridge over, let's say, my mind, we want to do a flying bridge there. Can we really build it? Okay. Economic feasibility. The question is, will the benefits outweigh the cost? That is normally what the economists or the guys at the treasury will look at. Hii pesa mnayopeana ya 1 billion jenge barabara. Would we rather go and invest it in the schools? Watoto ndama ipeleke kwa help. So again, when it comes to benefits, we should be able to do what we call a cost-benefit analysis, which would help you to determine your returns. Financial visibility. Is it financially viable for the implementing entity? So if it's about you are doing something as a business, you must think about your profitability. Where will you get the funding from? Are you able to secure funding sources? Social feasibility. This is also a very key thing that sometimes we forget to factor in our feasibility studies. Is it acceptable to the community? Will it benefit them? So the issue of cultural appropriateness. You know you can do something and then nobody would prefer that. One of the best examples I like giving is that there is a time we had this discussion about promoting clean bookstores. Wale watu wa ushago. The idea is that there is a lot of pollution from the traditional system. So we want to reduce the pollution by giving them a very clean ticket. So we brought in there, people brought in those clean bookstores that are maybe assembled in China. Unapea mama pale, ndio we are hoping that now they will transition. Waache kupika na hiyo matriston watumie hii. Then guys go back later to do monitoring and evaluation. Wanalia kumbe mama bado anaendelea na the triston. Hapo ndio anatemshia report yake. Now doing further investigation to realize maybe his store at night is not generating enough money. Na watu wengine wanasema hata hiyo store budi yenye inapigwa na hiyo sio tamu kama ile inapigwa. So there are certain things that you can overlook and you can have a serious challenge. In the water sector, there are also concerns about wazungu walikuja wanataka kuchimba box as a way of reducing the distance women and girls take to draw and collect water. It came to realization that actually while wamechimba hapa karibu na nyumba, they still were not going to get water from there. They would prefer walking, and in that process they would have their losing time. That's what yani hiyo time wanatembea kwenye huko kwa waterways is good for them to catch up and do some little talks.
And also when they send children to go and fetch water from that distance, the parents have time to have their conjugal.
See, so that is not the issue of social feasibility. There are very little things, but you realize how impactful they can be. So whenever we do a project, we should be able to ideally do some of these studies. I know they are expensive, but you can do them. And if you don't have resources, you can actually request, as I said, the donor in advance. They can avail you some resources to do that. The issue of environmental visibility, as I said, this is very important. I think you are familiar with this. NEMA would require you to do an EIA. Then there is the issue of institutional management visibility. As I said, the capacity. Some donors actually, you can write a very good project, but before a pesa wanasema they want to do what we call a due diligence or capacity assessment. So they will come and look at your systems, you have your financial systems, government staff. So again, that is also something that you have to factor in. So this is now a highlight of the Kilifi water project. When you look at it from the feasibility studies point of view, what would that project be looking at? So when we talk about technical feasibility, one of the key things that they will be interested in groundwater surveys. If you're going to drill a borehole, si ni vizuri kwanza ujue kama there is enough water under. So they can commission a survey, a hydrological survey. Okay? The other thing they can also look at from the technical point of view is the borehole drilling technology. Is the technology feasible? Can it be implemented in that area? Then the issue of water quality, because there were issues of sanitation. Unajua unaweza chimba borehole na huko chini maybe the water is contaminated. So we have to do water quality analysis. So those aspects can form part of the technical assessment. for that Kilifi water project. How about economics? So some of the things they can look at is the issues of reduced healthcare costs. Because of now the increased waterborne diseases, health centers are spending a lot of money treating what patients. So are we able to do now an assessment and see that we are actually likely to reduce the costs of these health facilities? There is the issue of increased productivity. School attendance is also something in terms of saving women and girls. From a financial point of view, what will be the financial feasibility? What will be the issue? The issue is about sustainability of those structures beyond the project funding. So umekuja umechimba borehole, how will it be maintained once the funding is gone? Are they able to start charging a fee? Ndio kuna zingine whereby you pay small fee so that for purposes of even maintenance, because those structures have to be maintained. So that's the kind of thing you will do under assessment. Social. So how is this going to address issues of gender inequality? Okay? And also bring in the participation of the community. What are the environmental feasibility concerns? Issues of proper waste disposal. There are trees. Okay? There is the issue of also depletion of water resources. You know that can also be an environmental crisis. You might be drilling a borehole whereby maybe the water is not enough or can only sustain the population for the next 5 years. So that can also be an issue. In institution, so they are looking at Kilifi County Department of Health and Water, of course, in terms of their capacity and of course the capacity of the project. So you can see at least every project, you will have some aspects that you can subject through feasibility assessments. And it is very important that those are done. As I said, if we don't have resources, we can also do this desktop or using available literature, but you can also validate this with stakeholders consultations. Now, having said all that, having done all that, at least now you are ready to put together a project board. Up to this level now we can come up with a concept. I think we have covered 3 conceptions that will enable you to do a concept note. It's normally 2 to 5 pages, and this is your initial engagement tool. You keep a meeting when you are saying now to pitch. This is what you start with before you invest time in doing a detailed project proposal. So in the concept note, these are some of the sections. Of course, this can also vary from donor to donor. You must have a title, problem statement, objectives, methodology or the activities, results or impact, budget estimate, key stakeholders who are involved, then issues of sustainability and regional capacity. So what have we learned out of this module? Yes,
I think if we can go back to the former slide.
okay.
Will you be sharing this?
Yes, I'll share this.
My colleagues don't override.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the issue is more of reflecting on these ideas and see how you can apply them in your work now as you start doing that. So when you are told to do a pitch to a donor, be able to capture this slides, 10 slides. Should be able to capture this as part of your project information.
If it's in the slide form, then just with 2 slides. So first one you cover half of it, then the second one you cover half of it. English.
When Tuendelee?
Maybe a question.
Yes.
Will we be able to make one proposal? I mean, a draft while we are here for you to evaluate.
Kuna exam. Kuna exam, kuna practical exercise which is very strange. Ni ndio mnapeana hizi kazi ya kufanya exam. But kuna kazi. Haiwezi ama kutoka jana mtapewa kazi. Yes. So by now, you start thinking of your project idea. Every university is presented. I am sure you give me trying to understand or to build skills or not to mobilize resources. It will be very sad if you are coming here and you don't know the idea. You want to mobilize resources because that is the starting point. Kama hauna idea sasa tutakusaidia. So the first thing is to have the idea and from there now tutasaidiana. Ni kweli? Yes. So for module 2, these are the key things we would say that we have covered. The importance of defining the problem very clearly. We must talk about the core problem, what is the cause of the problem, and what are the effects or the impact of it. Stakeholders, we have already seen how to map and the engagement. How to, the need of coming up with smart objectives. The issue of feasibility studies, is non-negotiable. Because we don't want to do something and realize later this is not going to work. Then the cost element highlighted to you right now. Sasa we are going into the deep sea. So we have done the concept note. I can assume that your elevator pitch, elevator pitch was successful. Now Donna amekwambia go do a detailed work. Go do a detailed proposal. This is actually where now the design work starts. Okay? So under this module, you will be able to understand the logical framework approach for project design. This is one of the tools that we use in designing projects. Okay? Then we will also look at detailed project activities, inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So, one of the key challenges that comes with the issue of proposals is when you have a very weak design. You can be very good in writing, but unasoma hiyo kitu it's not making what sense. So this is what we need to address first. You must first of all design the project before you can do the writing. Right. So as I said, this is the tool that does project design. It's called the logical framework. I don't know. I'm sure maybe some of you or all of you have already interacted with this. It's a tool that is been mainly used by development partners in supporting countries or organizations across the world, mainly used by major donors like the World Bank, the EU, and the UN agencies. So why should we use this tool? Because it helps to clarify the project design. It also helps in understand your project design very well. The goal. So you write your goal there. So you write your goal there. You write the main objectives or purpose of your project. Then you of course indicate the outcomes of your project, the outputs, as well as the activities. That's where you write all those things under the project summary section. Then under the objectively verifiable indicators, it's about how you intend the indicators that you will use to monitor progress. As I said, all these things, when we are writing them, they have to be smart. So you must have an indicator to help you measure progress. And then means of verification, what evidence do you use to show that what we are doing is actually that you are achieving it? And then for every project, you must have the key lists. So we are going to put this session and you'll be able to see how that works. So this is the hierarchy of the objectives, as I say. The goal or the impact is basically the higher objective to which the project contributes to, mainly long term and is broader. As I said, this one you can get it mainly from the national development plans or strategies, depending on the sector you are working with. So for the purpose of the Kilifi project, their goal was about improving the health and socioeconomic well-being in the Kilifi North sub-county. Now, outcome. How you say the outcome? First of all, the outcome is the direct effect of their project outputs or the change we want to see by the end of the project. So for the purpose of the Kilifi water project, the outcome that they wanted to see there by the end of the project is that the community living in Kilifi North have sustainable access to safe water and improved water sanitation services. So the expectation is that by the end of the implementation of that project of Kilifi, you will see more communities having better access in water and sanitation water. Now, what about outputs? The outputs are the immediate, tangible products or services generated by the project activities. So when you implement an activity, the result of that activity is what we call an output. So for example, for this Kilifi water project, one of the activities there is having a functional well. So in the problem statement, they were saying that some of the boards they are functional, they are not working. So the issue of maybe repairing or rehabilitating some of those walls to make them functional is now the activity. But the delivery or the output is having a functional wall. The other deliverable or output they are looking at is rehabilitated water pipeline. So maybe how do you connect now the water from the borehole to the households or the institutions? So some piping or plumbing works. The other output you can look at is training. So you want to equip the water resource users association with the knowledge and skills to manage those water structures. So training of those groups becomes like for example, under this training that we are doing right now, at NetBank we are going to say we have trained X number of university staff from different from X university institutions. So that becomes the output. But for us to achieve this, there is a lot of preparation. There are the training materials, to find some mixed assessment. So those are now what we call the deliverables. Then the activities are the tasks that you need to undertake for you to achieve the output. So for the Kilifi water project, one of the things they needed to do is to conduct hydrological surveys. Remember we said that before you start doing a bore, you must do a survey. You come up to match. There is the issue of drilling, procuring pipes for purposes of piping. So for this training, as I've said, we did a lot of work in terms of coming up with these training materials, making sure that we have a venue, doing the needs assessment. So those now becomes the activities. Now about the indicators and means of verification, as I said, indicators is about how you will measure or how would you know if an objective is being achieved. And as I said, the indicators must be smart because they are aligned with the project objective. So for this project, they are Kilifi, one of the indicators that they picked for measuring what are the number of new or rehabilitated boreholes providing X liters of water per day. See how that is very specific. Mnaona venye iko very specific. It's not just saying they have drilled X boreholes. Hii borehole inatoa maji yake capacity ngapi? You can do the one borehole but it's the yield ni kidogo. So that could be one of the indicators. Now, means of verification. So how will we know that we are actually achieving that? You can look at the borehole completion reports. The contractor mwenye ana drill, they are required actually to do a report to show how much water that borehole is produced. So you can take that as a means of what? Verification. You can also take the meter, water per meter readings, or the water user administration reports. Assumptions. As I said, it's very important that in your project log frame, you are able to identify the key risks. You know, assumptions and risks are like something in the same point. So, for the assumptions, we are looking at what are these factors that cannot be controlled by the project, but they are very essential for the project success. So for the Kilifi water project, the key assumptions that were made there is that one, there will be community participation and buy-in. You know, you can do this project in a community, but the community is not really. Policies, there is no taking government policy. You know, sometimes the government can say, now, we are not doing this, and your project is rendered useless. So those are some of the assumptions. So the risks is about, so if those assumptions come true, then they become actually a risk. And therefore, we have to come up with a mitigation measure on how we are going to manage those risks. So this is a complete, a filled-in log frame for that Kilifi water project. So you can see the goal from Nekapale. The goal is improved health and socio-economic well-being in Kilifi North Sub-County. The indicator they have given there is 40% reduction in waterborne diseases incidence by 2028. They have given another indicator on 15% increase in household income related to health savings productivity by 20. So I will share this with you so that you see how that project for Kilifi was translated into a log frame. And you can use the same example. So that's about project design. And as I've said, the log frame is the tool that you use to design your project. Once your project is very well designed, it becomes now very easy for you to do the right. The next module, because I want to finish this before we don't know how much more time we have, is the financial analysis. So the financial analysis is basically at the heart of bankability. Remember, it's about determining the return on investment. Okay? Why is it very important? Donors want to know how much funding is required. We want to know where the funding will come from, how it will be managed, because it's about also prudence in management of the resources, and whether the project is financially sustainable. Donors don't want to support something when the funding ends, the whole project has collapsed. And then what are the risks? So you must have a plan or a budget for that month. So when you are doing your budgeting, you need to be cognizant of the key cost drivers. So you must have a comprehensive costing, which will include capital expenditure costs. If you are doing a machine, these are assets. Price of costs. Take into consideration operational expenditures. If you are paying staff, salaries, rent, consumables. And then another indirect or by cost. So this is sometimes how they class. Some donors like classifying their or categorizing their costs in this way. And then you must also have a detailed breakdown of category of costs. So personnel, travel, equipment, training, construction. Why this is very important for donors is that sometimes we have seen projects whereby unapata like 80% of the budget is about trainings, meetings. Na hakuna kitu inaenda kwa, there is very little investments. So you must be able to show that actually you are investing in that. And then make sure that you always have some notes. Factor in issues of inflation. Right now the dollar, if you are the most donors, maybe you require to put the in dollars. If you use that an exchange rate of I don't know how much, Nigeria it depreciates, that is going to affect your budget. Then also the issue of risk management, I think I've spoken about this. I think in about this one. So maybe it's just to show you the risk management matrix for the Kilifi water and sanitation project. So for this project, these are some of the risks that were identified. So one of the risks there was the issue of boreholes yielding less than projected. So you can see at the start that we are hoping that the boreholes we are going to drill are going to have this capacity of liters of water. Now, if they yield less, what would you do about it? Then there is the issue of risk of prolonged drought, reducing groundwater, delayed disbursement from donor funds, changes in ground government. So every risk you must indicate the likelihood of it happening, impact, and you are able to rank it as whether it's high, medium, or low. So for example, for the above, in case they implemented that project and one of the boreholes is yielding less water, what mitigation strategy did they propose to do? So one of the things they say is to design flexibility for alternative water sources. So we can do rainwater harvesting. So maybe you can support the households there, all of the institutions to do roof water catchment harvesting as a strategy. Because we can do a whole is not proficient enough.
Sorry, I think that also needs another visibility center. Reason,
Yes.
I'm not really undermining the people of Kili. You know the level of the standards of living out there. And they are telling them to fetch, to
Do roof water.
uh,
You are right, by the way, in saying that. Again, even the mitigation strategy we are proposing has to be fit and appropriate for that community and the context.
correct.
As you are saying, maybe most of the houses there are glass houses, so it's not possible. Yeah, so you are right there in saying that you have to check on what else you can do. So I think I want to stop there. Or there were issues of legal and regulatory compliance. I spoke about this in the morning on some of the issues that might be of concern. We talked about maybe a project might involve the acquisition of land, the Land Act and the acquisition process. Labor laws, if you are going to do a project that you are going to hire people, casuals, you must be aware of what is the minimum wage. Employee wanafunzi kuna hiyo pia ni exactly. So that's very important. Sometimes if this is very complex, we engage a legal person. When the project has so many legal issues, you would rather engage a legal person who can do a proper analysis and provide proper advice. So these are the key takeaways for that. So the importance of doing risk management. Now, what you've been asking. So this is what I want us to do.
You've been asking for exam.
Yeah, so I think we can start from here. Okay? So if you can first of all, I don't know, you said how many universities we are here? Right? So every university can come up with an idea in this format. Then we can present now that we learn about how to design a project. I know this is very high level. It requires a lot of work and time to reach even this stage. But just to get an idea of the understanding of the key concept. So we want you to come up with an idea, describe the problem, when you how it should be stated. Then you come up with 2 to 3 SMART objectives. You outline the scope of the project. And I want to add something there that is not included. The stakeholders. You identify key stakeholders. And it requires you to discuss the partner. Yes, because I think it's very important. Yes, and then we talk about what are the key risks and mitigation. Oh, I go. So if we can do this, I think this will be a good starting point for us to continue with engagements on this project design and so thank you so much for your audience, and I really wish you a very successful proposal process. Maybe I can take 1 or 2 questions in case you have. Otherwise, I think we are going to work on some exercise and see how we are trying to apply some of these things that we are going to do. Yes, that should be applied. That should be applied. Sorry? Oh.
I have a question.
Yes.
Most fathers want to know about the impact of their project. I don't know whether I'm getting your presentation in the afternoon. If not, could you just speak a little bit about it? Or when I explain the visibility of my study, is that sufficient to show impact?
Part of it actually, part of those systemic studies is able to demonstrate the impact. Because when we are looking at the social flexibility or economic flexibility, when we talk about impact, we are looking at it from 3 perspectives. What are the environmental impact, economic, and social? So you should be able to analyze your project and see how is it contributing to those 3 dimensions. Is it something that's going to create within jobs? Is it a project that is going to increase impact for the community? Is it something that we are doing to maybe improve the environment? So it's very important to know. Now it will really depend on the project that you are doing, and it will be able to bring out those elements. If it's an energy project, for example, I'm going to, for example, help more people access clean energy or reduce emissions, because we are talking about use of carbon. So it depends on the project that we are doing and the sector that we are focusing. There are those impacts that are more inclined to health sector, others are maybe around education, others are around agriculture, environment, wildlife. So you have to contextualize the project properly to get it impact. But ideally, you should look at each of those three. Yes. Your name, please.
Maybe you can. Okay, my name is Gladys
Yes.
from Moa. Yeah, so my question is maybe you can tell us your observation or your experience in submitting and solicited proposals.
Okay, I will explain on that one. I didn't believe I stopped. We stopped that because it was not very successful. We have learned and we have now understood that for any resource mobilization process or activity to be successful, relationship building is the first thing. You must raise it. You must build a relationship. That is very, very, very important. Even if I see World Bank doing an opportunity, if I have not talked to someone there, or we don't have a relationship, I'm like really wasting a lot of time. That's our experience. Maybe some other institutions have been very successful, but for us, it's about first of all building a relationship, and then now we need to just any other? Okay. So I guess then we can end it here. So in the afternoon we can take like this 45 minutes. 5 minutes, we do the assignment, and do a power. And then we have another 1 hour or so for presentation and feedback. So we need to now critique each other work in light of the learnings that we've had. Otherwise, thank you so much. I think one will issue a good I don't know if they submit that, so.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And,
We were told when Andrew moved around, the numeric is what it calls individual resource mobilization. Individual mobilization part. I don't know whether that is true.
make me understand that.
Before fundraising for your organization, you need to fundraise for yourself first, then you can move to the organization to do what you can.
We are seeing a practical experience. And I like good.
Hiyo tutaongea na yeah, so we'll talk. But I'm yet to also hear from you.
Yeah.
I really needed because I've been doing a lot of talking.
Yeah.
I just hope that I could hear from you experience generally about resource mobilization for your programs in the university. What are the key challenges and what has really worked for research? I think I really need to understand that because that's a sector that I don't really understand. But it would be nice to have that bit of understanding so that even as we are talking, we are able to contextualize our references.
I think when we present, we'll be able to bring out all these issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
That's when you can be able to contextualize the kind of questions to ask based on what we present.
Okay. All right. Sawa, asante sana.